Got a suggestion from Wireless Mike here. It is for, well, with the fifth count. He's talking about developments from Biden's recent call. Biden spoke with Israel recently. And Lordy, I mean, going into this blank, I don't know what he's going to say, but wouldn't it just be lovely if he said, hey, we're going to stop helping you do this genocide? That'd be neat. That'd be real neat. I know those the people that ordered the murder of the people driving food trucks down a path which was supposed to be safe. Those folks got fired. The two commanders who did that. That's not good enough. It's just not. The IDF is a bloodthirsty organization. They are currently engaged in a genocide. We are currently assisting that genocide. At the same time, just down the road, we are fighting. We are doing this. We are offering the same type of aid to people on the opposite side of an ideological battle. We are helping the Ukrainians stop their own genocide by arming them. The hypocrisy is astounding. The brutality is unacceptable. Let's hope. Let's find out.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again.
Howdy, Bo.
So today we're going to talk about Biden, that call, and the things that have transpired since that call, because we already need to do an update on it, because there have been some developments. And we're going to talk about foreign policy. So we're going to start off with an incredibly quick recap of the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Good.
We noticed around the time of the State of the Union that the Biden administration was getting a little bit more, well, let's just call it anxious.
Let's state that since then, New York voted 12% uncommitted in the primaries. That's huge. Good job.
When it comes to the situation, the rhetoric was getting a little bit sharper, and there was an indication that they were ready to exert a little bit more pressure. But at that time, we didn't really see it. You saw the Biden administration get a little bit more leverage that it could actually use without, having to redesign the entire U.S. presence in the Middle East. Some of that came through requests for aid, and some of that came through the French throwing up that resolution at the UN that included the recognition of a Palestinian state.
Morbius Dragon, welcome to the Friends of Doris. I have to say, very quickly, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. Delighted to have you, Morbius Dragon.
It gave the Biden administration leverage, but didn't know if they were going to use it. We saw more calls about Rafah. Then you had the video conference about Rafah. The information came out. It was productive, constructive, but not so constructive and productive that they didn't need a follow-up meeting. We knew Biden's call, a call between Biden and Netanyahu, was going to occur. And there was the hope that that was the moment that Biden was really going to say, this has to change. Because of the added pressure on top of the famine, the added pressure when it comes to World Central Kitchen. The call occurred. The first statement from the White House came out. It mainly focused on what the U.S. said, not a lot on how it was received by Netanyahu. You can't trust the first statements, ever. There's more There's more information that is going to come out, and you can tell a little bit more as things move along. It wasn't long after that that National Security Council spokesperson Kirby came out, and he said that they, quote, hope to see announcements of changes in the coming hours or days. I mean, that's confidence. That's confidence.
I was going to say, that's a mighty bold statement, especially considering the fact that, in my opinion, Israel has been playing us. They are no different than MAGA. They just they know the guns come from us, the missiles come from us, the drones come from us. Their ability to commit this genocide is hugely helped by us. And all they have to do to keep them coming is to say, all right, we'll consider it. All right, we'll deal with it later. Later never comes. So for John Kirby to say hours or days, that's good. I don't trust it till I see it anymore. Early on, I tried to give the Biden administration as much leeway as I could, because I understood that Joe Biden's way of negotiating, while I didn't approve of it, it had been effective. It had worked out. But no, it clearly doesn't work here. And B, no matter what we end up getting out of this, the price was too high. After a week, the price was too high. All right, moving on before I get sad.
That suggests that Biden might have used a lot of that leverage. I would imagine the part that the public never gets to hear would be Biden saying something like, what makes you think we're going to veto that French resolution? Because that would definitely get Netanyahu's attention. Something like that. It would be something big to instill this level of confidence, unless Netanyahu's team had already called and said, okay, we're going to do some stuff. Shortly thereafter, the news started really coming out. Netanyahu and the cabinet over there have agreed to open the gate in the north. The gate in the north to allow aid in. This would allow direct access to the most heavily impacted areas, the areas where the U.S. says that famine is probably present.
Understand that if the U.S. is not, let me change those words a little bit, where the U.S. admits that famine is probably present. The U.S., and I realize I'm criticizing somebody who is doing supposedly doing what we want, but I just want the wording to be accurate here. The U.S. has run its own propaganda to make this seem like it's anything other than what it is. We have been told by world organizations repeatedly that starvation is happening, particularly in Rafah. That's where people are clustered, trying to survive the genocide. So if the U.S. is admitting that starvation is probably present there, that's huge. Also, we've seen the pictures. It's the age of cell phones. I've looked at too many children's ribs. Too many. The penance I do is every day I don't talk about Gaza, I look at more dead Gazans. It's probably pretty effed up, but that's what I feel I have to do. Same reason I touch my hand to my forehead when I pass a dead animal on the side of the road and think, I must acknowledge that it happened. I must see it. I don't recommend you guys do. great way to get just swallowed up by the darkness of depression. But the point being, we've seen this. We have the video evidence. So words like the U.S. says they believe this is happening, it means they admit that it is happening. When the U.S. says that Israel must protect civilians, they mean stop murdering civilians. Protect them from who? What they mean is stop killing those civilians. That's what they mean. That language is tricky. I'm not even blaming Bo here. He's talking about it in the terms they're talked about in the United States. I just want to be clear about what that all means.
And they agreed to give Jordan access to a port to basically flood the area with food. Realistically, this is good news, but it's just an announcement. The U.S. response to this was basically great, but, well, it needs to, quote, must now be fully and rapidly implemented. The announcement isn't enough.
Good.
And it's worth noting, I can guarantee you, this is not all they asked for. This is not all that was spoken about. I would guess there's stuff about Rafah in there as well. Now, as long as no games are played and that gate gets opened, they don't, talk about security concerns or whatever, this stands a really good chance of stopping the situation in the north from spiraling out of control to the worst case scenarios. And to be clear on that, the numbers that we've talked about on the channel that are in the tens of thousands, those are not the worst case scenarios. The worst case scenarios are they're really bad. So that's where it sits right now. There's been movement. How effective it's going to be, we have to wait and see. But the conversation certainly appeared to have an impact. How big and how long that impact lasts is yet to be determined. There are 3 real quick questions about this that we're going to go through right now. One is that, Biden keeps talking about an offensive into Rafah. They're already doing stuff in Rafah. An operation and an offensive are not the same thing. What's going on now, the raids going in and stuff like that, those are operations. My guess is that, I know the Biden administration is okay with those. My guess is that they're actually encouraging them because those are lower footprint when you are talking about civilian loss. An offensive is a major offensive, something that would realistically in Rafah send hundreds of thousands of people fleeing into areas with no infrastructure. If that occurs, the humanitarian situation would be almost impossible to deal with, if not impossible. If they launch an offensive into Rafah, there's not going to be any mistaking it. So it's use of military terms that may be getting lost in the coverage. Another one is, why isn't Biden pointing out the delivery dates when he takes criticism about the recent arms transfers? We talked about this on the channel more than once. The whole point of slow walking delivery of military aid, if you believe your ally is about to do something that's just a really, really bad idea, the whole point of slow walking it is so there's not a record of you doing it. When we talked about it, I think I said something like, Biden could address it via priorities. So, we've got Ukraine, we've got Taiwan, we have our own needs, and the political winds just aren't with you right now. So don't worry, we'll get you your stuff. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
when we talk long term on this channel, when we talk about actually getting a progressive in the White House, which I want to stress again, less important than getting a fully progressive, either Democratic Party or whatever you want to call the party of progressives in the House and Senate. But when we talk about that golden day, when we finally fully win this country, it's that kind of nonsense which I envision going away. That's my hope for having a progressive there. When you talk to a foreign leader, speak honestly. You have strength. You say, we're not giving you these, not because, oh, this excuse, that excuse, which, I mean, he's right. That's the way it's done. That is the way it's done. Now, that's the way it has been done, always. We've never had a progressive. Closest we came was FDR. Never had a progressive in the White House. I would prefer to have a strong leader who speaks honestly, who is forthright with our allies and our enemies, and says, we are not giving you these weapons because we don't like what you do with them. We will have nothing to do with this slaughter. And I don't need to do kabuki theater about it because we're honest about our intentions with you, with our constituents, and within our own hearts. That's what I want.
The whole point of doing it that way is to not put it out there that when your ally requests something, you're not giving it to them. So for that to be effective, he just has to take the criticism. It's not fair, I guess, but it's foreign policy. Nothing about this is fair. That's the reason he's not pointing it out. It's also worth noting that some of that's just the way it is. Like when it comes to the planes that won't be there for years.
Well, because you can't.
That's the normal time frame. There's some other stuff that have.
Quick explanation for that. Just not saying agree or disagree, but like think of Ukraine when we talked about giving them planes. You could give them planes and say, all right, defend yourselves. You know what? Ukraine's amazing. They learn how to use things fast. How quickly could you learn how to fly any plane? Now imagine a fighter jet. You're a foot soldier. All right, learn how to fly this billion-dollar killing machine. Now learn how to fly it well enough that you can go into combat against other planes. Just a matter of practicality. So that's not a matter of Biden getting points or not getting points. That's just the state of what handing planes to allies looks like. It takes a long time. Hopefully longer than this genocide continues, because I do not want them getting U.S. air superiority, U.S.-style air superiority.
That's been requested and approved, that's taking months to get there. Sure, maybe that's a legitimate shortfall, but in most cases, a lot of the stuff that's taking months to get there could be there in less than a day. I think it is possible that some of it is him slow walking it, but we'll never know. Not until long afterward. It's possible, but we don't know that. And then the last one is, why isn't Biden pushing for an immediate permanent ceasefire? Because when he's saying ceasefire, if you don't know, he's talking about a temporary one. This is something we've talked about since early on. Biden and that foreign policy team, they are not going for a ceasefire. All of this started during a ceasefire. They're angling for a peace. All of their moves are angling for a peace, and one that includes a Palestinian state.
So this is a great example of what we were talking about earlier. Remember when I said that I don't agree with the way Biden does things and that the cost was too high. This. Um, I agree with the long-term goal here, as they call it, a two-state solution. I know there's some debate. Should it be one state wherein Palestinians are supposed to have guaranteed rights, but their president is Netanyahu, or their leader is Netanyahu? Or two-state solution where Palestine is finally recognized as a state? I'm a two-state solution person. That's where I am now. I could be easily swayed because, I don't have a degree in nothing relevant. But regardless, the way in which this has been approached has required the deaths of just football stadiums full of people that had nothing to do with it, that needn't have died. And that's not okay. That being said, this would be a good thing. Again, not worth the price paid. Again, requiring consequences in the United States for those that allowed it to happen, including Biden. I would like us to have memorials to our political failures put up. I would like to see a statue of Joe Biden failing to confront Netanyahu, covered in the names of the civilians he allowed to be killed with weapons bought and manufactured in the United States. But I also want to see Palestine allowed to be its own state and not to be an open-air prison like it has been, under the control of a far-right extremist government whose goal has always been to exterminate those people who live in Palestine.
That's where they're going. That's what all of their foreign policy moves indicate. The concern, I think, from the Biden team is that if they get a permanent ceasefire, then there's less urgency to get a peace deal. That's my guess. I don't know that, and that is not something that has been said. But if I had to guess what the reluctance was to support a permanent ceasefire, it's that. Because they're angling for a peace. They're angling for a long-term solution, not just a permanent ceasefire that just reinforces the status quo before the 7th and honestly basically guarantees another giant cycle. I personally believe that you could have a ceasefire now and work out the peace. I believe that's possible. That doesn't look like what the administration believes. But if I had to guess, the reluctance is because they're not angling to just return to the status quo. They're going for a peace. They're going for a peace plan. That's what all of the moves with the Palestinian Authority and all of the different talks about regional security forces, it's not for a short-term ceasefire. Because understand, a permanent ceasefire, it's an oxymoron. That's not a thing. If it was a permanent ceasefire, it would be a peace with very, very few exceptions.
Yeah, I think I largely agree with Bo the Fifth Column's opinions there, right at the end especially. It makes sense that is something that the Biden administration wants. I would put this forward. If he and I can look at what the Biden administration is doing and come to the conclusion that they are working on a more long-term deal for stability in the region, which involves a two-state solution. Do you think that the Netanyahu government didn't already see that? So between whenever the Biden administration makes its attempt to get this and now, what's the Netanyahu government doing? They're slaughtering civilians. They're tracking members of Hamas and passing on opportunities to kill them immediately. Instead, they're tracking them until they go home and then bombing the building they're in. So they take out a whole slew of civilians. And they can say, oh, human shields. Shame. I don't know that no, there's always things we can do. I don't know what it is, if I'm honest with you, right now, regarding the path Biden is taking, except to say, keep voting uncommitted. That has had a big effect on the way the Biden administration behaves. They realize we understand what's going on. They always knew this was the way it was going to be. They just thought that we were the America of a generation past. They thought we were going to turn a blind eye to the death of folks who are brown. That's what they thought. The uncommitted votes have shown them otherwise and scared the hell out of them, rightly so. Keep it up. We got more elections coming. And in doing so, that's more opportunities to put pressure on Joe Biden. Great suggestion from Wireless Mike. I do appreciate that breakdown. I think Bo, the fifth column, has a useful view on international politics. Thank you for the suggestion, Mike.